Hi everyone, just before we start this show, we've got an incredibly exciting announcement to make.
It is so exciting, especially for people who like to watch live comedy podcast fact shows.
What a great description of our show, James. It's like you've been rehearsing that for years. Yes, we are going on tour to do our Comedy Live podcast fact show. We are going all over the UK and Ireland, and we are then going to Australia.
And then we are going to New Zealand.
Indeed we are. When are we doing this, I hear you ask? Well, we are starting off going to Edinburgh to just perform the podcast in August.
Yes, and then we will go to Bristol, Dublin, Glasgow, Newcastle, Cardiff, London, Manchester. We'll play all those places in the UK and Ireland, and then we are going down under in November.
Is that your attempt at almost doing an Australian accent?
I pulled out of it at the last second.
I think that was a wise choice.
Well, we're going to go to Adelaide, Perth, Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, Auckland, Wellington, and Christchurch. But Anna, how do people get tickets?
They can go to nosuchthingsafish.com/fish tour, where you'll find links to any venue that you want to attend, or why not come to all of them?
Why not? Indeed, I'll be at all of them.
So will I.
So do come along to the show. It's going to be so much fun. We can't wait to get back on tour. Come to those gigs. Come and say hi. We'll see you there.
Okay, on with the show.
On with the podcast.
Hello and welcome to another episode of No Such Thing as a Fish, a weekly podcast coming to you from the QI offices in Holborn. My name is Dan Schreiber. I'm sitting here with James Harkin, Anna Tashinsky, and Andrew Hunter Murray. And once again, we have gathered around the microphones with our 4 favorite facts from the last 7 days. And in no particular order, here we go. Starting with fact number 1, that is Anna.
My fact this week is that in 1974, thousands of swallows migrated over the Alps by train and plane.
Wow.
But not automobile. This is amazing. Yeah, so it was 1974 and there was bad weather all over the Alps. And this meant that insects were quite hard to find. They were dying or not being born. And the swallows were getting really hungry and cold. And this meant that they couldn't fly very well. And bizarrely, it was the police in Zurich who, for some reason drew attention to this.
This is a crime against nature.
Well, exactly, yeah. Not too much crime in Zurich at the time, I guess. And so they said...
Quickly qualify that, because it is a hotbed these days.
Yeah. And so they said these swallows are having a bad time, and this thing was organised to fly them over the Alps or take them by train, and Swiss Air flew 10,000 of them.
Oh, how interesting. You see, when you said the fact, I thought it was like just a normal swallow was flying along and then jumped on a train. You know, like sometimes animals jump on trains.
Like pigeons, yeah.
Like pigeons.
Oh, don't open this.
I know, this was... I can't believe you've gone there, James.
Or on
argument.
planes or something. But you're saying actual flights were put on.
Yes, sorry, because I can see, because
Wow.
swallows, I guess, fly in formation. So if one goes on a train, I guess they'd all follow onto the train, and that
Yeah.
would just be a terrifying train journey for a lot of passengers.
Yeah.
But no, flights were put on. Swiss Air put on lots of flights, and then lots more, thousands, in fact, were taken under the Alps or through a tunnel through the
Where do
Alps.
they go to, swallows?
They were
the
going
winter?
to the Mediterranean
Okay.
to get a bit warmer. So they were flown to Nice, Marseille, Barcelona. They got the train. And
it.
yeah,
It's very nice. It's a very heartwarming story.
it's a lovely tale. And I learned it from a heartwarming place, which is a book that my mum got me years ago called The Little Book of the Dawn Chorus. It's made of cardboard and it's about 10 pages long, and each page is a big picture of a bird, and then you press a button next to that picture and it makes the noise of that bird.
Is it a children's book?
Doesn't sound like a grown-up's book.
I think children probably enjoy it for the most part.
Are you getting all of your facts these days from bedtime reading to your kid? You had Goodnight Moon.
Oh, yeah.
You had Sweet Packets.
Good Night Moon
Oh,
was
yours was
James's.
Goodnight Moon. Sorry.
God,
yes.
what was my Sweet Packets
You
one?
said you found a fact on the side of a sweetie that you were...
Oh my God.
Your
you might be
research
right.
has gone downhill a lot.
It's a bit ropey, isn't it, actually? Yeah.
You do get birds going by ship all around the world.
Okay.
And that is more in what I thought the fact was. In they're flying along, they get a bit tired and they just sit on a ship for a while. And then they go on the ship for a bit and then they fly off again.
That's clever.
And we found out this because they put tracking signals on birds, and they went, well, this one started going really slowly and exactly in the same direction as that tanker that we know goes in this direction.
So funny.
And so, yeah, apparently it is quite common if you get injured a little bit, or if you're flying along and you get to a bit of turbulence that you can't really fly through very well, you might just drop down, go on a boat for a few days,
so good.
and then
Nice.
fly off again.
I saw a video the other day of, it was either a hawk or an eagle. It was giant, and there's a guy who's gliding, and then it just perches on his frame and just kind of like chills out for a second to get a break and then goes off again. It's the most insane
Do you
footage.
think the hawk knows that it's like a glider or whatever?
I don't know.
Or do you think it thinks it's a really big bird?
Yeah.
In which case, do hawks also land on really big birds?
That was going to be my next question. Do they have resting stations on a flock of birds?
And there's a blue tit on the hawk, and then
Yeah.
a butterfly on the blue
I
tit.
guess you do that kind of when you're flying in formation, right? Because you're directly behind someone and you're kind of hitching the lift a little bit on the guy
Yeah.
in front.
A
Yeah.
bit, but if you did climb onto the back of the guy in front, I think he'd be annoyed.
There is a theory that would work, which is if you had flights, let's say from London to Zurich, there are 10 flights every day, whatever.
Yeah.
If you were to get them all to go at the same time, then you could have them flying behind each other like geese or like swallows or whatever.
Right.
And that would save us loads and loads of fuel.
That's so cool.
Oh, we're using the tailwind.
Yeah, you basically,
Well, not the
there's no
the-
turbulence. It's like a slipstream.
There's no air
Yeah, sorry,
resistance.
slipstream is what I mean. We're
There's
using the
literally
slipstream.
less air in the way. 'Cause
Yeah.
it's been pushed out of the.
And the only reason we don't do that is because people like Dan are scared of flying.
Yeah, I'm not up for it. If the one in front brakes hard, then I'm going with
If
the
you
back
put
of
those
it.
air brakes on,
Yeah, exactly.
But what if we arranged that all the sort of nervous people get to go in the front plane, so they're fine.
Oh, what if
why
one
do
of
they
them
get there first?
Oh yeah, yeah. No, all right. Well,
Let
this is,
losers go at the back.
see, this is why it's not happening. This
Yeah.
is why because people can't get along.
But apparently we have the technology.
That's
Well, it's a
very
good idea.
exciting.
It's a really good idea.
You don't have to leave at the same time.
Yeah,
It's
that's a problem.
inconvenient.
Yeah.
Sometimes you want to leave at a different time, an hour
I
later.
think it's a great idea. I think I might have mentioned this before. I would like it if when if you're sitting in traffic in a car.
Yeah.
Right, technically, as soon as the light goes green, it should be fine for everyone to just jam on the accelerator to full, right?
Yes.
Because as everyone accelerates, the gaps also accelerate to the same
Yeah,
amount.
yeah. But what about me reading my phone at the front?
That's what's called a New York second. A New York second is the time between the lights going green and someone directly behind you beeping you the second it goes green
Oh,
to get you
wow.
to move.
Am I the only person who, when I'm sat second in line and the other person hasn't noticed, I don't beep? And I'm just like, you know what? I'm not going to beep. I'm going to be a good citizen and I'm not going to honk. I'm going to let them notice by themselves
How long does that last? Just
until it
for-
goes red again. I'll
Yeah, I
just,
don't
I'll just
think-
let them do
Well,
it.
I think you might be the only person.
Are you doing it if someone's behind you as well?
Yeah.
Wow.
No, I've
usually the
never-
person behind me will beep.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
Fairness.
what you're doing is you're saving yourself the effort of a beep because you know that the person behind you will probably get
I'm
around
just
to it.
following the highway code. You're not supposed
no,
to.
you're not. You're looking at your phone at the traffic.
That's not what you're supposed to use your horn for. Tell people that lights have changed.
No, that's true. It's only if there's an imminent threat to life, isn't it? That you meant to, or sort of
Yeah,
only
or to let someone know
danger.
where you are as well.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
So
I've-
you are letting them know where you are. You're saying, I'm here and I'm not happy about it. Birds.
I
Yes.
really like ab migration.
What's that?
Ab migration.
Ab migration. It's basically when you're a bird and you're migrating from one place to another, but you accidentally join the wrong flock and you just follow them to wherever they're going, and you end up in completely the wrong part of the world.
Wow. Oh, so they don't realise there's not halfway
Not
through.
until they get
kinda.
there.
Yeah,
And they're
right.
Like, oh shit!
There's no one I can shag here, presumably. Does that really happen?
It does happen, yeah.
Sad.
This is a very old fact, but I discovered it's not on our show, so I'm just plopping it in our show because it's something we all know. But in France, if your pet snail gets a train, it needs its own ticket. It has to pay for a ticket, and it costs €7 for it.
€7?
€7, which
That's
is
cheap.
a dog is 20. So
You think that's cheap?
Well, it depends where you're going to. But if you're going all the way from, Nice to Brest, €7 is an absolute steal.
But not for a snail.
Well,
That's
how
the-
long is it going to take to walk?
I guess.
Yeah.
You're just so used to hearing about European trains being so cheap and amazing. And, you think, well, that's striking. I mean, especially because if you've got a few snails, that'll rack up quite quickly.
Well, what I'm confused about is one person is only allowed one animal, so one animal per person. So
Right.
I think you're only allowed your favorite snail to come.
You must be able to claim it's a wild snail. If you just put the snail down next
don't
to you and
know.
say, it's nothing to do with me.
Yeah, but then he gets kicked off for fair evasion, and then you've lost your favourite snail.
He's like, Anna, we've known each other for years.
Honestly, it's a different Anna. James, sorry, I have to ask. When you just used the example of going from Nice to Brest, was it because in your head you were saying the words nice breast?
Great question. Great question.
That's what I've assumed. You've just got nice breast going through your head at all times. And you thought, I can use this.
Genuinely, I thought of what is the most southeasterly town and what is the most northwesterly town I could think of. And that was it.
That
Okay.
is good.
Yeah, very strong.
I have
Do
a
believe
link.
it?
I have a link.
Yeah.
Patricia Highsmith, the writer of
yeah.
The Talented Mr. Ripley, didn't she keep pet snails? And I think she would turn up at places with them in a handbag, and I think she would let them crawl around her.
I think she hid some under her breasts when she was going from one country to another, so she didn't have to.
Exactly.
Really? Oh, there you
Her
go.
nice breasts. So there we go.
Yeah, we've come full circle.
There we are.
By train.
Birds and trains.
Yeah.
So, Japanese trains. What's the first thing you think?
Bullet.
Shinkansen.
Fast. Exactly. You've all said the right thing. Fast.
on
Shinkansen,
time.
bullet. No. Stop.
I know more. I know more.
Fair enough. There was a problem with the bullet trains, right? They were they were fast. That was great. But they were causing these sonic booms when they came out of tunnels because they pushed the air ahead, and like a cork out of a bottle, the air just pops out really loud, hundreds of meters away. It was so loud. It was like miserable to live anywhere near.
Yeah.
These trains. And they were on overhead wires as well. And then the chief engineer, who was called Eiji Nakatsu, he was interested in owls and how owls move quietly, because owls have these little structures on their feathers called fimbriae.
Yeah, they make like vortices and stuff. don't they?
Exactly. They break down the air into sort of micro turbulences. And he said to his team, this is the future. And
So every Japanese train has an owl strapped to the front.
that's right. It's very cruel.
And instead of a horn, they go.
So there are these wing grafts put on the trains, and then to deal with the train coming out of the tunnel and having the sort of cork popping sonic boom effect, he looked to kingfishers because they dive into the water with no splash. If you've ever seen really slow video of kingfisher just diving in, no ripple. So he changed the body shape of the front of the train, and they are quieter, and they have less air resistance, they use less energy, they cost less, they use less fuel.
You know what birds also do? Fly. So he could have put wings on it.
Yeah. And it all came, all came from that.
Very
Yeah,
cool.
so
Bullet trains are
cool.
based on birds.
It's basically birds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In China, they have a tunnel that they're building at the moment for trains. It's 12 meters across, this tunnel, but due to the movement of the Earth's crust, it's shrinking. And it's currently now less than 3 meters across.
What?
Because the Earth's plates are squishing it together.
Oh, no.
Isn't that amazing?
That's incredible.
Hang on, and this is a train tunnel that was built 12 meters across.
They're currently in the middle of building it. It was supposed to be ready to go in like next year, but they keep going back and it's smaller again.
How confusing.
no.
You'd think you were on Punk to something. You were like, what is going on? This was massive
So
yesterday.
are they going to have to make the train one of those very small novelty steam trains?
Everybody off the big train. Okay. Isn't that weird?
That's so
And
good.
They put loads of concrete supports in. They just got smashed because it's
Yeah,
the
if these are
Earth tectonic
if these are
plates.
tectonic plates. It's
Were
not-
they moving that? I didn't know bits of Earth were moving that fast.
Well,
That's
let me
terrifying.
introduce you to earthquakes.
Nice. Well, nice to meet you.
But this is, I mean, there are some parts of the Earth that are moving.
is
I mean, this
amazing.
is not like moving, you can't see it moving.
And they're still sticking with it? They're not just
Well,
going to get a new
I think
mountain?
what they're going to do at the moment is they're just going to wait and hopefully it's going to stop moving soon. And then they're going to be able to build it.
Oh.
Wow.
Just put it nearby.
Well,
Just-
hang on.
what a plan.
All they need to do is wait long enough, and then the movement will go so much that the tunnel will
Start making itself.
it will reverse exactly,
Yeah.
and it'll start getting bigger again. Because all the concrete will have gone through to the other side. Do you see what I mean?
That makes no more sense with the accompanying hand gestures that we can see than it does to the listener.
Okay, fine.
Do you know the Snowdon Mountain Railway? For abroad listeners, there's Snowdonia is the highest mountain in Wales and it has a train going up it, which is kind of famous because it's a way you can cheat to get to the top. But did you guys know that it was built in the 1890s and its very first trip, all the trains on it crashed and it had to close immediately for a year?
No.
It's
For a
such,
year.
yeah, 1890. 1996. So there were 2 trains that went on this inaugural journey. They got to the top of Snowdon. One was released to go down. They completely lost control. The engine of it derailed, and the driver and the guy who was spooning coal into it or whatever both leapt off it.
Shuffling?
Spooning coal.
We can't get the power. It's so weird. Use the dessert spoon. Stop with the teaspoon.
Oh, I thought differently. I thought, where's the conductor? He's in bed with coal. Stop hugging that coal and get out here.
Yeah, look, I don't work in the rail industry.
Stoking.
Stoking. The stoker and the driver both threw themselves off the engine just as it flew over a cliff and hurled down onto the ground below.
Wow.
A few hundred meters. And then the carriage is careering down on its own, the
goodness.
rail. So all these passengers are on the carriage.
But ahead, there's a points, and there are 5 people strapped to the track.
There was one death because there was one guy on the carriage who saw the driver and stoker leap off the engine. So the guy in the carriage thought, well, I better do that as well. So he just threw himself out of the carriage and sadly plummeted to his
he was
death.
the only one who died, right?
Whereas the rest of the carriages eventually slowed down.
Once
But then
they
this-
entered a tunnel, which gradually grew and grew
Exactly.
closer, grinding them to a halt.
Stop the podcast.
Stop the podcast.
Hi, everyone. We'd like to let you know that we're sponsored this week by LinkedIn Jobs.
That's right. LinkedIn Jobs is a job board, but it's not just a job board. It's so much more than that. It helps you, if you're looking to hire people, find just exactly the right person for the company.
Absolutely. So you might want to hire a new golf caddy or a new Yeti finder or a new moss wrangler. But how are you going to find someone who could do all those things? Well, LinkedIn is the best place because they have the best people. Did you know that over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites?
That's right. So it really is the place to go and the only place to go if you're looking to hire the right person. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours.
Absolutely. And the best thing is that because you listen to No Such Thing as a Fish, you can post your job for free at linkedin.com/fish.
Indeed. So go to linkedin.com/fish to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
Okay, on with the podcast.
On with the show.
Okay, it is time for fact number 2, and that is Andy.
My fact is that in 1827, a shop opened in Cincinnati where the principal currency was time itself.
I'm just remembering we only let you do this fact, didn't we? Because we knew you would do that.
Yeah.
We wanted
Did the
to
voice.
see. Yeah,
Yeah.
and you did. It's a
Worth
good fact
it.
as well.
Thank you. This is a place called the Cincinnati Time Store, and it was created by a guy called Josiah Warren, who was a utopian and a socialist, and he would now be described as an anarchist, but I don't think the phrase really existed at the time. Basically, his idea was, I'm going to sell things for what they cost me, and the only thing I'm going to add to the price is the value of the time I've spent on this stuff.
Yeah.
So he claimed basically labor was the only true currency, if you like.
So it's like the time of people coming into the shop and deciding what to get, the time of him wrapping it up, the time of
Exactly.
him weighing stuff, the time of him bringing stuff from the back room into the front, like that, all that kind of stuff.
all of that, and it involves quite a lot of calculation. And also, I love this. The longer he spent with the customer, the more it would cost the customer because his time was worth money.
Yeah.
So if I'm behind that customer that's taking so much time, do I have to pay less? Or
Yeah, they haven't noticed. You're in your car. Do you honk your horn, even though it's costing? I think he had a timer dial, so that as you stayed in the shop for ages, saying, "Oh, I don't know if I want the big one or the small one."
Yeah.
he'd sort of notch up because this is his time.
It
But
actually seems more aggressive, even though it's a utopian, cheapening thing.
Yeah.
But he said that it went through so many customers in such a quick amount of time that he could shut the shop halfway through the day because he'd done basically the full day's worth of money that he needed to earn.
Yeah.
Which is pretty
Well,
nuts.
you can't do that with a shop. What if I want to get to the shop at 3:30 and they've just closed at midday because we've had enough customers for the day?
we'll go to a square capitalist shop and not to the utopian anarchist.
Fine. He was also, and I don't think this is how he'd like to be characterised, but he was just like a modern day lawyer in the sense of time, wasn't he?
Yeah,
Because
like
that's what you get with lawyers. The more time you spend with them, the more they charge. You're having not that
and
I'm
sex workers,
and sex workers, so you've got to rush through both. Haven't
I
you?
assume. Never used a lawyer, so I'm not sure if it's the same. For the first few days when he opened it, he didn't have a single customer.
Really?
Yeah, and he asked his brother George to come and make some purchases for his family.
Clever.
And then George came and told his friends, and then George's friends came. And then in the first week, he'd made $5 worth of sales.
Is that a lot? It was in the
No.
1820s.
Even
wasn't
in
it?
those
So-
days, it wasn't
okay.
enough to live off.
Okay.
But it took off relatively quickly after that. There was a guy who had another shop around the corner who kind of came in and said, "You're putting me out of business, mate."
Yeah.
And he
Oh,
said,
really?
Yeah, and he said, "Well, maybe you could show me how to do it." And Josiah Warren sort of said, "Okay, well, this is what I'm doing," and the guy copied his system.
I think the idea is that time also has a slightly variable value. So nobody profits from anyone else's labor, is the idea. You don't get to just add a huge whack to the amount of time you spend on something because the time is the currency. But also, if a job is harder or more disgusting, I think it would be worth more time. So, for example, I love making this show. So probably, an hour and a half recording, I will actually only get paid half an hour of time because it's so
yeah.
much fun to do.
But responding to the emails that people send in, how much would you?
Quintuple. Yeah, I'll make it back.
That's why I get paid 5 times as much as you, isn't it, Andy? I hate making this show. So 2 hours recording, I should get paid.
Do you know why that was the case? Because actually, this idea was not new. But the reason that he had different amounts for different people is because he'd previously been in another utopia called New Harmony. And at New Harmony, that had failed because anyone who was good at like building houses just decided, wait a minute, I'm getting paid the same as the people who are doing something which isn't skillful at all. And actually it all fell apart because of that.
Right.
And so he decided that his new utopias and new ideas were going to be slightly different and have a slightly different thing where different skills paid different amounts.
So he took over this small little town called Modern Times.
Yeah, the
They
place
had-
is called Modern
It was
Times. It's
called
so
Modern
weird.
Times
Yeah.
as a name. They had like 150 people who signed up to the idea of living in this utopia.
So that started off a bit dodgily because he had this big group of people who were all utopians. And then one of them began to advocate for plurality of wives. Another one believed that clothing was a superfluity. So you didn't have to wear any clothes. And there was another one who thought that actually you shouldn't really eat properly. You should just eat beans and nothing else.
Oh, no.
And yeah, it was basically attracted all these people who had all these different ideas outside of the mainstream. And at the very start, it went really badly, and the newspapers were saying this is gonna be a disaster. But it did prosper in the end.
Did it? Even though it sounds like a load of farty, naked, sleazy men.
I think they got rid of the farty ones and the sleazy ones,
Okay.
and the other dwarfs. And then in the end, it did falter, but it was because there was a huge panic in the mid 19th century, and then the Civil War, and then that was where it fell apart.
Yeah. But it did, according to their press, it went for 13 years solidly.
Yeah.
They didn't have government, they didn't have law, no police, but they didn't have any reported crime or violence. And
Well, if you've got no law, you're not going to have any reported crime, are
yeah,
you?
yeah, that's just from supposedly the people.
A
that
naked
live
man
there.
stole my third wife.
Josiah Warren also invented a lamp.
Time lamp.
Just a non-time lamp. It burned over time, but it had a utopian idea at its core, which was to save people money. So it was made of lard instead of tallow, and it burned much more efficiently. But the good thing about this lamp is that the patent for it was destroyed in a fire at the patent factory
No.
in 1836.
That's very funny.
And
Isn't
it-
that true of like the
Fire
fire
extinguisher?
extinguisher?
That's correct. It's the same fire.
It was the same fire.
Well, it was this huge, it was an incredibly
Yeah.
famous fire, and there are these things called the X patents, which are the first 10,000 patents. And I know I should be saying patents, sorry, but the first 10,000 patents ever issued, and they were all destroyed in this fire, this massive fire at the US Patent Office.
It feels like there's a good plot for a movie or something in there where they're rediscovered actually that we'd made copies.
Yeah.
Someone had made
Yeah.
copies and all these new technologies turn up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we thought
the
were
X
lost.
patent man.
Yeah, that's quite good.
that's excellent.
He made a newspaper as well, Warren, in 1833, so a few years after the shop, for which he built his own printing press and cast all the type himself.
Yeah.
He does seem to have been very practically minded.
He also invented a new kind of music.
Did he? What was that?
Rap.
Gangster rap. No, it was called mathematical notation.
Okay.
And
Oh,
it
yeah.
was a way of using maths as opposed to using do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. It was
Okay.
using numbers.
How
Hey.
interesting. He's described as an anarchist, and my impression of an anarchist is very different to what it sounds like he was.
What do you think of an anarchist?
I guess an anarchist would be someone who's raising hell, like suffragettes were being anarchists when they were
I see.
when they were bombing places.
That's a
and so on.
metaphorical anarchist.
Yeah, right.
An anarchist would be just someone who doesn't believe there should be any leaders in society, I guess.
Suffragettes very much not anarchists because they wanted to actively get into the role of electing leaders.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
It's very weird. So anarchism is, because everyone calls for an anarchist, is this big school of thought, exactly as James says. It's not we don't want leaders, no sort of state structures, people doing things for themselves and their neighbours is the basic idea behind it. But also there is a kind of extreme end of it in the 1890s. It was a big worry across Europe. The anarchists, who were mostly basically young men throwing these kind of like classic bombs, which are sort of big black
Cherry
wall
bombs.
with bomb written on the side and with a fuse sticking out of it, and throwing them at sort of elected leaders or royals across Europe. That kind of
Wile E.
thing.
Coyote. Yeah.
It's very it is like that, but it was a genuine fear because that was the sort of extreme end of anarchism. But President William McKinley, one of the 4 presidents assassinated, shot by an anarchist.
Oh, yeah.
And his assassin was a guy called Leon Czolgosz, who was, this is very dark. He was tried and executed, and then his body was destroyed by acid so that fellow anarchists wouldn't have a body to venerate or to turn into a martyr.
Yeah.
So they literally
Classic.
poured acid into the coffin.
Wow.
Put him in the coffin, close the coffin up, pour acid in, and then burned all his clothes and possessions after that.
Wow.
Ooh.
I know.
Don't do that again.
Yeah.
And then we get the Sex Pistols. It kind of calms down the world of anarchy, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The
If you can buy,
evolution
if you
of
can
an
buy a
anarchist.
T-shirt of it, it's not as anarchic as... Yeah.
I was looking into the idea of swapping money for time and seeing if that's been used anywhere else. And I found an example, which is something that's being trialed in 2019 in Estonia. They've had a huge problem with speeding drivers. So people are speeding, they're getting tickets, and then they are just paying the fine because they can afford to do it. And so in Estonia, they thought, instead of giving them a fine, what if anyone who's caught speeding has to do a 45 to 60 minute timeout? And now they're really late to where they need to go. They have no choice but to do this.
great.
57% of people actually said they preferred the idea of having the timeout. So the biggest problem they have is...
Meanwhile, James has pulled in behind the guy who's been stopped for speeding. He doesn't mind. Doesn't mind at all.
How are you policing that?
Well,
I think you need a person.
this is what they're trying to work out because
Yeah.
it takes a lot of people to have to
not
sit
practical.
there for an hour. It's not practical, but it's a great idea because no matter how rich you are, time is time. You can't get past that.
Not
Because-
practical, guys.
Well, what you could do is you could put some clamps on the car, and so they can't go anywhere, and then come back an hour later and take it off.
But
that's
most
good.
speeders are got by cameras, aren't they?
Yeah.
Maybe out of every camera
I
could
see.
drop a sort of big net that catches the car.
Yeah.
That's
it
much
pushes
more
them.
practical, Anna.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've cracked it.
And hiring some unemployed people to do the same work. Yeah. Kind of like detention for grown-ups, basically.
I have a related fact because it's about Estonia.
Yeah.
I was in Estonia relatively recently, last year in Tallinn, and I went to the Museum of Banned Books.
Oh, cool.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's a museum, but it's also a shop. You can buy books that have been banned from around the world. And I asked for one particular book, and they had it hidden behind the desk, as in it wasn't on display. Can you guess what the book is? So they had every banned book from around the world, and I said, "Oh, do you have this one?" And they went, "We do, but it's behind the desk. We're not allowed to put it on display." Oh, we're not putting it on display.
Is it a famous book? Will you definitely have heard
It's
of it?
famous, but whether you've heard of it, I don't know.
Oh.
I mean, it's very on topic from what we're talking about.
Oh, okay.
So a time-related thing, maybe.
Or an anarchist's book. The Anarchist Cookbook.
Correct.
Oh.
The Anarchist Cookbook is in the Museum of Banned Books, but isn't on display
Why not?
because it's so dangerous.
What's
What
in
is it?
It's a way of making bombs,
Yeah.
basically.
Okay.
Also, making illicit drugs, ways of freaking telecommunication devices. So
Wow.
this was written by a guy called Powell, whose first name I can't remember. But anyway, he reneged on it when he got older. It was published in 1971, and by 1976, he converted to Anglicanism and tried to get his book taken from circulation. And in 2011, he and his wife, Ochan Kasuma Powell, founded a thing called Next Frontier Inclusion, which was a non-profit organization for children with learning disabilities. But he
Really?
did that in a way to atone for this book that he'd written, which he can't control because he doesn't own the copyright to it anymore. It's out
Oh.
there, and that's it.
Did he do an anarchist thing with the copyright or something, or did it just got out there and it's
no,
been
it was the
replicated?
amount of time it just sort of went to the publisher.
Silly boy.
Yeah.
Think before you publish.
I really thought you were going to say the book that you couldn't access, James, was Tintin and the Soviets.
Oh, that is true. Like I went to the Tintin shop in
Yeah.
London, and they wouldn't. They would sell it me, but again, it was not on display.
You have a knack of finding things behind the counter. It's interesting. Like you can work out what will most freak out any shopkeeper.
But that they will own. You know.
But they will learn.
yeah.
I was just looking at money, times when money's been abolished. Do you know the only country to abolish money?
Oh, I'm going to say Bhutan.
Oh, I have some Bhutanese coins.
Okay,
at home.
I'd like to change my choice to let's say a communist one.
Yeah.
Cuba.
No.
Angola.
You've got the right. No, Andy's got the right first letter. It's definitely less utopian than Bhutan.
Colombia.
Well, I'm just going to tell you. Same number of syllables.
Begins with C.
Yeah.
Begins with C.
Four syllables.
Colombia.
Oh no, it's same number of syllables. 4 syllables.
4 syllables.
Cambodia.
Very good.
Under the Khmers, was it?
Cambodia under the Khmer's Pol Pot, who decided to ban money in 1975 when he came into power, and within 3 weeks there was a new currency. But then he decided he didn't want the new currency, so he blew up the central bank. I mean, obviously he did some absolutely appalling things alongside this. But yeah, blew up the central bank and money flooded through the streets. And people were using it because Cambodia was in a terrible state by that point because of them. We were burning money for fire
How
and warmth
interesting.
because it didn't exist.
When I was in Cambodia, which admittedly was quite a while ago, you would really just buy stuff in dollars.
Yeah, same.
Really,
yeah. Do you know the commonest denomination of US dollars?
Is
$1.
it?
It must be $1.
Used to be. In 2016, it was replaced. It's now the second most common.
I'm going to go all the other way. The $1,000.
I'm going to go in the middle. The $7.
Okay. Andy, you've gone too far into the realms of unreality.
Okay, so 100. It's got to be 100.
It's 100. It's the $100 banknote. Isn't that insane? $100 bills make up almost 80% of the value of dollars worldwide, and they are now the most commonly circulated bill. And it's almost all held outside of the US.
It's a lot of crime, though, isn't it?
It's a lot of crime.
Art fraudsters and drug money because it's large amounts of value in a relatively small.
Still counts.
It's finicky to do that in $1 bills if you're paying for
Yeah.
800 kilos of cocaine and you're at the counter and the guy in front of you is paying in ones. It's annoying.
James just sitting there happily.
You take your time, buddy.
It's all right. I'm going to be buying the stuff he has behind the counter.
Okay, it is time for fact number 3, and that is James.
Okay, my fact this week is that the 2023 Nobel Prize for Chemistry was won for discovering something that has been used in stained glass window making for 1,000 years. Glass, it was.
Wow.
Discovered glass.
That's a very late award.
We didn't know where it came from
No, we
before
didn't
that.
know. No one knew what glass was. And then they
Amazing.
were like, "Oh, it's in all those windows as well." No, it wasn't that.
What was it?
It was quantum dots. It was won by Maungi G. Bawendi, Louis E. Bruce, and Alexei I. Ekimov. And they discovered quantum dots, which are tiny, tiny particles. You fire light into them, and depending on their size, they re-emit light of a different color. It's all due to this thing we call science.
Tell me about that.
And quantum science at that. We don't need to really go into all that stuff today, but scientists have looked at glass back from the 10th century and found tiny bits of gold, tiny bits of silver, and they act in the same way that quantum dots act. When the sunlight comes in, they enhance the red light and enhance the yellow light.
And it's the size of the
It's the size of the
quantum
particle.
dot, which are there are a few nanometers across,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
the bigger ones emit a different color when light is fired at them than the smaller ones.
Yeah.
Is basically
I quite like it took quite a long time for me to understand it, but there was a really good explanation in the article you sent, James, by the American Chemical Society's president, Judith Giordon, Giord.
Ironically, pronouncing her name is
Yeah.
more difficult than quantum mechanics.
Judith Jordan. And she says to think of it like a little box. So basically, the particle is the box, and you have the electrons bashing off the sides of the walls of the box on the inside. But when you've got a big box, it's going to take longer for the electrons to bash into the sides. When the particle is shrunk down, the electrons are bashing quicker and quicker, and that's where it's emitting the different color, basically. So it's to do with the size of the box and the electrons smashing into the sides.
It is hard.
Okay.
It's hard to understand.
Yeah.
The thing is, they glow. They're
They
very
glow.
exciting because they glow and they're very colourful. And the reason they've won the Nobel Prize is because they basically made television a bit better. That's as far as I can tell.
We're all going to have cool quantum tellies.
Yeah.
QLEDs.
QLEDs. And it's the same principle as a normal LED TV, which is that light is shone from behind onto the dots. They glow in different colours. And you're watching your show and you don't really need to think about
But
it.
like if you think about an old computer screen or something, you could only really get like blue and yellow and magenta, like a printer. You only get those colors. And to make any other color, you have to mix them up in different amounts and you will be able to get a certain number of colors. But these QLEDs can show you way more colors than you could possibly imagine.
Yeah.
Nice.
Like teal.
Wow.
I can't imagine.
Now in
that.
teal.
Incredible.
Yeah. And mauve.
Yeah.
Puce. Oh.
And we should just say, in defense of the Nobel Prize winning scientists, that they are used for other things as well.
Yeah,
They're going to
yeah.
hopefully revolutionize the world of medicine because you're going to be able to spot the colors on the inside of the body. So they're going to be used for diagnosing certain bits of the body.
What?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
I don't know if you've explained that the right way. It's spot the colours on the inside of the body. Do
you
you
gonna-
mean send markers into the
Yeah,
body that
exactly.
can identify
It's not
tumours by glowing a certain
you've
colour?
got a green liver, you've got
That-
an orange pancreas.
It's to
Is that
leave,
good?
to leave to highlight spots where you need to monitor and make sure
Right.
that things. And that's the opening application of it.
Just on nanotechnology and medicine, and this is another cool use of nanotech. This is nano shells. So these are hollow gold or silver spheres wrapped around silica. Okay, so I think they are hollow, but they're kind of two layers.
Okay.
Like a Ferrero Rocher, but small, but so small that you could eat lots and it wouldn't matter. So if you fire light at these nano shells, they heat up massively because they're made of gold and silver, right?
Yeah.
So the idea is, if you have someone who's got cancer, you can inject the tumor with these nano shells, then you fire infrared light. Now, the light passes through the water in your cells because the water in your cells doesn't absorb much infrared light. These nano shells absorb huge amounts of infrared light. They heat up massively and it kills the tumor off.
Right.
Oh,
So if
clever.
you can, and they're experimenting at the moment on raw chicken. But the hope is that it'll make the leap from raw chicken to people. It's a really clever idea.
Are they basically cooking chicken by putting these nanodots inside it?
Effectively, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's clever.
very cool.
That's really
So
good.
It's a good idea.
quicker cooking and better tellies.
Yeah.
When Ekimov first came up with the idea of quantum dots, he was working at the Vavilyov State Optical Institute in Soviet Russia. And he had got these special glass objects, semiconductor glass objects, known as shot glasses.
Sorry.
Isn't that cool?
That is,
They were
yeah.
known as shot glasses, and they were lots of different colors. And he developed the theories to explain their color. And the interesting thing about those shot glasses is they were made by a company founded by Otto Schott. Okay, and that company still exists. And they made 90% of the first 1 billion COVID vaccine bottles.
Oh.
So 90% of the first billion COVID vaccines were delivered in shot glasses.
Lovely.
That's really cool.
Beautiful.
That's great.
That's so funny.
Ekimov, who you mentioned, as you say, he was in Soviet Union in 1981 when he became, in fact, the first person, I think, to generate these quantum dots, to identify them and learn how to generate them. But it's just one of those amazing things. It's so weird how often you read about this, I guess, when we do what we do, things happening simultaneously. It just shows how predictable a path humans are on, I think, because, is it Bruce? Do you pronounce it? Do you know?
That's how I pronounced it.
Cool.
It could be brew.
Brew, okay.
Fancy a brew?
Fancy a brew in your shot glass?
Was that Scottish?
Scouse, I think.
Don't know. At exactly the same time in America, Louis Bruce was working on the similar thing, and he came up with it pretty much a year later, I think. And the interesting thing was, I hadn't realized that the Soviet Union, if you did science there at the time, it basically didn't get anywhere because you had to publish it in extremely obscure journals that no Western scientists were really reading because it was all thought it was a bit
And
backwards.
in Russian as well.
And in Russian, which, a lot of us can't read. And so Bruce, a year or two later, read this thing in a journal, and good on him, he read it it and was like, oh, that guy's done the thing I did a bit before me. So got in touch with him, wrote him a letter to say, should we hook up?
Oh, what? That's wow.
And then they had a beautiful romance blossom.
Wow.
Amungi Bawedi, who was the third person who won this Nobel Prize, failed his first chemistry test at Harvard. And he was specifically the chemist who came on board to sort of make what the other two had discovered become practically applicable. And he did a speech recently saying he failed the chemistry test and actually got the worst grade in his whole class. And said that could have destroyed me, but I decided that it wouldn't. And it was
I decided that it wouldn't.
I decided, and that's the lesson. Good luck, guys.
There was like there's a book about archery, about the best way to be an archer, like a really old one. And the first line is, first decide to succeed.
Wow, that's so good. That's awesome.
Okay.
I really like that these three winners, by the way, they all advanced it in a slightly different way. Each brought something new to it. And I do like that the Nobel Prize system works like that it's not just the person who's found the application to the thing. It's the person who identified it. It's like giving a goal score in football, not only to the person who's kicked or headed the ball in, but to the assist.
Yeah.
And then even to someone who
Yes.
passed it to the assist.
Well, the whole team gets that goal. That's it. Actually, football does work like that because goals are not given to individual players.
You're schooling me on football.
But it's increasingly you do find out who the assist was for every goal.
Yeah.
And when
Do
you
you?
say, and
yeah, you always do.
when they talk about, let's say, Mbappe's done whatever he's done this season, they'll say he's got this many goals and this many assists, and they will mention it each time.
Yeah.
And I think it kind of began from fantasy football because you get points for how many goals your player scored, but they wanted to give points to the people who were creating the goals, and they gave them to them as well.
Really?
Wow.
Weird, I've forgotten that it wasn't always like that. But
Definitely
no,
not,
okay.
yeah. The Nobel Prize for Medicine this year, or last year in 2023, was given to Katalin Karikó and Drew Weissman for some mRNA vaccine stuff for COVID, but they had their initial manuscript rejected by Nature and by Science.
No way.
And they were rejected
Do
by
you
Nature.
mean by the journals, Nature and Science? Also, God and man have rejected your work.
Yeah, so Nature, the journal, rejected it within 24 hours. And so they didn't even send it to any reviewers or whatever. They just got the letter through the post and went, this is shit, and just threw it away.
Right.
Yeah.
What did you say it was for? It was for mRNA?
It was for developing more effective mRNA vaccines against COVID-19.
I really worry about sort of Trump listening to this and going, see, I told you, Nature and Science agree with me.
But what it was is that they didn't think that it was a big enough advancement. They thought they were just kind of repeating old things that people had already said, but actually later on they realized that it was actually a big advancement. The 2023 Nobel Prize for Physics, which was won by Pierre Agostini, Ferenc Krauss, and Anne Willier, is a way of measuring things with attosecond pulses of light. An attosecond is even shorter than a nanosecond. It's extremely, extremely short amount of time. In fact, it's 1/quintillionth of a second. And if you wanted to have a quick meeting with every insect on Earth, but had to complete all the meetings in 1 second, then each insect would get an attosecond of your time.
Food for thought.
And they managed to make these pulses of light, each one an attosecond in length. And that means that if you think about a movie has however many frames per second,
Yeah.
if you can make one every attosecond, then suddenly you can see things that are happening almost instantaneously.
I just find that when I'm watching films, and I don't mean to denigrate these people, but I find the colour's fine and the speed at which I see things happening is fine.
You're still confused about the plot 10 minutes in. It doesn't matter.
No, sorry, I should say that these attosecond stuff will not be used to
Film the next Bourne Identity.
No.
Right, okay.
it means that you can see like photosynthesis happening in real time.
Hang on, are you saying it also won't be used to give lots of insects performance reviews? Because,
None of that
What
stuff.
is the point then? Why? I don't need to see photosynthesis happening in real time. I'm sure it's really useful.
Well, Anne Willier said that basic research is very important because you never know what applications will be found in 50 years' time. We don't know what they'll be, but this kind of technology will change our lives, but we don't know how yet.
We'll be kicking ourselves when the 9th Bourne film is filmed using this method and you can see him punch the guy as it happens rather than slightly after it happens.
but can we address the heated debate on nano?
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
we should.
Great.
Yeah. So this is nanotechnology. This was all sort of in the birth of nanotechnology.
Yeah.
How do you spell it?
Nano. No.
Sometimes yes, and sometimes no. I got really into this etymology.
Sometimes no, and sometimes nah.
Yeah.
So it first appeared in biology as nano with a double N, 1909. This is niche
Right.
stuff.
I've never seen it spelled with double N.
N-A-N-N-O.
Yes.
Or N-N-A-N-O. No.
I think you know the answer to that question.
All right.
So the reason you haven't seen it is because it was used in zoology, and it was in biology. It is used with a double N. It's much rarer in biology, and it just meant very small. And it's because nano in Greek meant dwarf. So nanobacteria, nanoplankton, that it just became a tiny thing to mean tiny.
Right.
Then physics took it on, but there's a rule in physics which I didn't know about, which is very niche but very exciting, which is that if something is a multiple of something, so let's say you've got a meter.
Yeah.
If you're saying 1,000 meters, what's that?
Kilometer.
Kilometer.
A kilometer. And that you use the Greek. So kilometer, kilo is from Greek.
Okay.
If it's a submultiple, like a factor, like 1,000th of a meter, what do we say?
Milli.
Because if it's a submultiple, exactly, we use the Latin.
What?
So they shouldn't have used the double N in nano because that was the Greek.
Oh my God.
This is
Whereas
amazing.
the Latin for dwarf uses a single N, nanus, and so the physicists who were adhering to convention changed it to a single N. Aren't you delighted you know that?
No other podcast is blowing shit wide open like this.
Anna, I'm so sorry. I actually heard that fact on Shagged, Married, Annoyed last week. But it was Shagged, Married, Annoyed with only one N because
That'll be my spin-off.
Shagged, Married, Anode, the Batteries podcast.
Yeah.
Beautiful. That's your spin-off.
There we go.
Shag married Adenoid, which is mine about my sinus problems.
Shag married anodyne for Dan. Ow, no, that's me.
You're lucky I don't know what that word means.
It's another word for wife guy.
Is it? Okay.
Shagged, Married, really happy. Love my wife.
Make love, marriage.
Marry, then make love.
Okay, it is time for our final fact of the show, and that is my fact. My fact this week is that right at the southernmost point of Sweden, you will find a statue of Uma Thurman's naked granny.
I'm going to say,
Yep.
as a guess, that it will not be her when she was a granny. It might have been her in an earlier life.
Yeah, you would say that in the correct way, yes.
Unlike that.
Yeah, she was a model. Her grandmother was a model called Birgit Holmquist, and the sculptor who wanted to make the statue hired her as a model, and it's positioned right on this little seaside port in this town, which is called Smygehuk. Outside of
Trelleborgs.
outside of Trelleborgs, yeah.
Does it mark? It's basically if you go past the nude granny statue, you are leaving Sweden.
No, I don't. I'm not sure. It's
It's a nice statue.
it's a beautiful statue. You know,
Is it full naked?
she has
No fig leaf or anything.
Nope.
Good on her.
no.
Starkers.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Do we know anything else about this woman? Are there statues all over the world of her, or was she just that and then gone?
No, I mean, she was a model, but really the Thurman family, like they're all such fascinating.
I reckon
people.
it started with these guys, though.
Yeah.
Right? So she was a great Swedish beauty, but not from like a extremely rich family or anything like that. But she married a Westphalian baron called Karl von Schlebrugge.
Lovely.
And Karl von Schlebrugge had a monocle. He was a baron.
Of course he did.
He was briefly jailed by the Nazis for refusing to denounce his business partners who were Jewish. And Bridget used her Swedish nationality to kind of say, oh, look, he's Swedish as well. He needs to come out. He needs to come out. And they managed to get him out of prison. and then they moved off to, I think they went to Mexico or China or something like that, away from the
Mexico.
war.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was basically the start of the dynasty.
Basically, they fled Nazi Germany at what is now clearly the most socially acceptable time to have done that, which is in the 1930s rather than in 1945,
Yeah,
halfway
yeah,
through, and moved to Central South America at the exactly.
You've got to specify, don't you? Oh, I moved to South America from Nazi Germany. When?
Because actually there was another German living in Mexico at the same time with a very, very similar name who was a Nazi spy.
no.
And some people on the internet think it's the same person, but I'm pretty sure it isn't the same person.
Von Schleebruggers. That's
I'm also
unfortunate.
pretty sure that Mexico isn't South America, by the way, in case someone complains
Very-
about me
It's
saying
Central
this.
America.
No,
Great
it's
point.
North America.
What? Then what's Canada? Right, sorry, great point. Sorry to all. Do we have listeners in Mexico? I don't know. I don't think I've ever had an email from anyone in Mexico.
Okay, if you're in Mexico.
Yeah, right in.
Right in, please.
So, okay, that's the Schleebruggers.
Yeah.
And then Uma Thurman's mum, so their daughter, was Nina von Schleebrugger. And she was also a model because she was very good looking because she had
Monocle jeans.
monocle jeans. and she was a model in Manhattan. And she modeled for Dali, Salvador Dali, I think.
Yeah,
But
but yeah,
she
she
was very
wild,
interesting.
wasn't she? She, as in the life that she led and the names that come up. So before she married her husband, that would lead to Uma and her brothers. She was married very briefly to Timothy Leary, who she was introduced to by Salvador Dali. So Timothy Leary, for those who don't know him, he led the big push for psychedelics and LSD and counterculture in America in the 60s.
Briefly was correct.
Yeah.
They were married very briefly. They separated during the honeymoon.
No.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Leary said, "We had time traveled through a few mythic incarnations, played out magical dramas in panoramic realms. Now we would have to rise to that most complex human art, gentle separation."
Right.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'd leave him too, actually. If that's how he's describing.
And she met her then next husband, Uma's dad, while she was at a house trying to get Leary to sign the divorce papers. So he was there for other reasons, trying to get Leary to do something.
Well, I read that Robert Thurman,
yeah.
who was Uma Thurman's dad, obviously, was only present at that house where Nina was trying to persuade him to sign the papers. He was there trying to stop Leary taking so many drugs. So
How does that go?
I don't know. Not very well.
That's funny.
Leary's the guy who coined the phrase "tune in, turn on, drop out."
That's right.
Yeah.
So he's big counterculture guy.
Yeah,
but then
yeah.
Robert Thurman is even more interesting than Timothy Leary. He's kind of a Indiana Jones style scholar of Buddhism, and he's very cool.
He seems to be one of the people who made Buddhism cool in
Yeah.
the 20th century,
Yeah.
really. Kind of one of the leading popularizers of it in the US. So he seemed to have a revelation in 1961 when he was changing a flat tire. And he said the tire iron flicked up into his eye. And he went into a coma for 3 days, so I must have flicked up quite hard. He woke up and he'd lost an eye. But
God.
as he says, he lost one eye but gained 1,000 more, as he put it.
Whoa!
And that's when he
That's a
gave up.
botched surgery, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think the surgeon was on LSD at the time.
Dr. Leary, not you.
No, he was a bit of a playboy, and he gave up his whole playboy lifestyle, hitchhiked to India, and thought, I really want to become a Buddhist monk.
That's kind of what the Buddha did, though. The Buddha was a sort of playboy prince, wasn't
Yeah,
he?
that's
He was,
yeah.
But Thurman supposedly became the first American to become officially a Buddhist monk,
Yeah.
to be recognized as one.
Yeah.
That's
Do you
what
know how
I've
long he
read.
lasted?
How long?
I think less than a year.
Oh, God.
No.
He met this lama. So he flew back from India to America, met this lama, and was like, I've been in India and I'm desperate to become a Buddhist monk. I'm going to be amazing at it. The lama kept saying, I'm looking at your karma and you don't have monk in you. I promise. You've got great things destined.
You haven't got Lama Karma.
You haven't got lama karma. That's what he said.
Okay.
But Robert kept on saying, no, I really want to do it. So eventually the lama took him to meet the Dalai Lama, the big lama,
Yeah.
as he's otherwise
Boss
known.
Llama.
Boss Lama, yeah, boss level, who did ordain him as a monk, and literally within 18 months, he resigned.
Why?
So
Why?
the monk lifestyle, he decided, wasn't for him.
It's hard.
Yeah.
They're
He's still leading. He's still massive.
He's still
yeah?
leading the movement. The Dalai Lama was very like, yep, cool, good move, mate.
They're
Yeah.
best mates.
Yes, he and the Dalai Lama are very close, and he's the president of Tibet House US, which is the main Tibetan organization in the USA. So,
They have a bet with each other to see if they can both live until the year 2048.
Oh,
That's
it's
what
getting
they're aiming
closer.
for.
That's,
Yeah.
How do you know how old that would make them both? Because I think Robert Thurman is in his 80s.
Is he? Okay.
One of them will be 107, I think, maybe Thurman.
That's ambitious.
Is it what happened? They said, "Are you going to live until this date?" And he said, "Yeah." And he said, "Want to bet?" And he
Brilliant.
said, "Yes, I do." And then Xi Jinping said, "Well, tough."
That is too good.
Uma Thurman sounds like the least interesting member of her own family. I presume she was a relatively interesting person, but all these antecedents are so interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're awesome. So, James, just on the topic of Uma Thurman,
Yeah.
you have been watching her entire her entire output of movies,
I've
right?
started,
Yeah.
but I only started 2 days ago, so I've watched Kill Bill 1 and Kill Bill 2.
Right.
Has any of you seen Even Cowgirls Get the Blues?
No.
Oh, I bet that's. I mean, it's based on an amazing book, but
Have you read it?
No, I have it at home.
It's the kind of book you would have read,
Yeah,
actually.
Tom Robbins.
Yeah, very good, very good. No,
Yeah.
it's apparently a very bad film.
Okay.
But I just love the concept. It's just about a woman with unusually long thumbs.
Really?
And so
What's it called?
It's called Even Cowgirls Get the Blues. And she
And it's
just
an
had-
Uma Thurman film, sorry.
It's an Uma Thurman film.
I'm
She
clearly
plays
on,
this
yeah.
girl with very long thumbs.
That's interesting. She doesn't have long thumbs in real life, I don't think.
So I think she might have had to wear prosthetic thumbs. No, she doesn't have.
She has big
freakishly-
feet,
She's got
doesn't
massive
she?
feet.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's why she's in all of what's his name? Who does those films?
Tarantino.
Tarantino. Yeah, because he likes feet, doesn't he?
Does he?
I think
Is this-
so. Because there's lots of shots of her feet in these two movies. I can say that.
She has size 11 feet,
Get
and that's
out.
American.
What's that in old money?
12? I don't know. 10.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's one
10.
either side.
Yeah, it's
isn't
one
it? I
either
can't
side.
remember.
Well, that's big either
Don't
way.
know if it's
That is
Latin
very
or
big
the
either way.
Greek.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
huge.
She can't have size 12 feet.
No, it's got to be 10.
But 10 would be very big. It's still a good fact.
You don't need to write it and tell us, by the way. We will have been able to Google the conversions after
Oh
we finish
no!
recording.
Don't write. Do not
Please,
write
God,
in.
don't
Please
waste your
write in. I
time.
don't want to wake up to 15 emails about all subject line Uma Thurman feet pics. I don't want that.
If you're in Mexico, then tell us what size 10 is in your country.
And also, which America are you really in? Oh dear. Do you want to hear about another very attractive Swedish woman who was turned into a statue?
Okay.
Okay.
Or not turned into the model for.
Can we guess?
Absolutely not.
Bridget Bardot,
No, she's not a famous one. This
Ulrika Johnson.
she's still quite famous, I'd say.
Oh yeah.
Do you feel like you're not being listened to, Andy?
No. This is Pitt Karin Ersdotter, okay?
Oh.
She was a Swedish young woman. She was incredibly beautiful. The whole story about her is just, she was a milkmaid. And the whole story is basically, she was just so fit. So she went to Stockholm to work for a year. And basically no one could believe how attractive this milkmaid was. And
And the bar is high in Sweden as well. Don't
Yeah.
forget, that's not like being the most attractive person in.
Wow.
Why would you bleep that place
my
out?
God.
Bleep that place name out.
That was.
Bleep it out. No one will ever know the place
can't
name that I said
believe-
there.
I can't-
Sorry, she was the most attractive person in
She was
Scotland.
just so fit, basically, that
We
everyone.
get it. We get it. She's hot.
But and the stories are like the Crown Prince visitor incognito to ask for some milk because he just wanted to look at this milkmaid. But
wow.
and he forgot to bring a container, so she gave him a sort of scolding.
With
Not-
hot milk.
Not a scolding, sorry, a scolding. She created traffic jams because she was so beautiful. People were sort of doing a go slow as they went past.
Or was that
yeah.
just James not moving?
With his horse and cart. Yeah. And there's a statue of her in Sweden now. And I think part of the reason she was apparently so beautiful was that she hadn't had smallpox.
Oh, okay.
okay.
So the bar was slightly lower.
Yes,
Yeah,
she had cowpox, and she was accused actually of having sold more than just milk. If you know what I mean. But that was
Cream,
not
eggs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Milkshake.
Actually, she hadn't been selling any. She hadn't been
Any of her milkshake.
Right.
Yeah, she'd been selling milk, and she was just accused.
Her
So where-
milkshake brought the king to the yard.
Yeah, and he's like, "Do you have a spare bowl?"
What's the most famous statue in Scandinavia?
Do you have the answer?
Yeah.
The Copenhagen mermaid?
The mermaid?
The Little Mermaid. Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably an advert for Carlsberg.
No.
Yeah. It was commissioned by the founder of Carlsberg, Jakob Christian Carlsberg. And he basically said, well, I've got the best beer in the country, so I'm going to do this nice little statue for everyone to see. And when they see it, they'll remember me and remember my beer.
Oh dear, that's fucked up, isn't it? Because it's one of those adverts which is very memorable, but you've got no idea what it was for.
Yeah.
It's probably the best mermaid statue in the world.
Nice.
Very good. He hired a sculptor called Edvard Eriksson to create it, and he hired a ballerina called Ellen Price, who was very, very famous in Sweden at the time, to model for it. But she was unwilling to get naked, and so the face is hers, and the body is Mr. Eriksson's wife.
Really?
Wow. What about the tail?
No, that's his wife.
Oh,
That's
right.
right.
That's so weird.
I've just got one more celebrity grandparent fact.
Oh, yeah.
Drew Barrymore's grandfather's corpse was stolen. So this is John Barrymore, who was a very famous actor he was the John's 1922 Hamlet, which you probably remember was the greatest Hamlet maybe ever.
Yeah, that was a good one.
It really was. He was a famous actor. He was ruined by alcoholism and died in 1942, relatively young. His mates were people like Errol Flynn. And Errol Flynn wrote in his memoir that after Barrymore died, their friend got his body, obtained his body, and hid it for Errol Flynn to find to freak him out. So propped him up in a chair, and then they spent the night playing poker with it.
Is that what Weekend at Bernie's is based on?
Do you know
it
what?
is.
I think largely it is because it was
Really? Is
not
that-
only Errol Flynn, it was David Niven, and I want to say Orson Welles, someone in that territory of
There was a
fame.
group of them,
There was a
yeah.
group of
I
them.
think it is because I haven't really heard of any of those people, and I've never seen Weekend at Bernie's. I'm not really sure what happens in it, but I still kind of knew that fact.
Wait, so is Weekend at Bernie's about them playing,
I think it's
staying up
about
late with the corpse?
keeping a dead body.
Their
Yes.
buddy dies, and they need to keep a holiday going, and so they string him up and they use his dead body. To
There
get
we
into
go.
places.
That's sort of what they did, except just to have a fun game of poker with him.
Wow.
Confirmed by Drew Barrymore in 2020. So
That's right.
Good Lord.
yeah, it's pretty cool.
If I die,
Yeah.
please don't do that. So don't do another podcast.
What do you want us to do with your dead body then? Shall we could prop it up and do something fun? Prop it up and collect some moss with
Yeah,
you.
lovely.
Or
Yeah,
the
yeah.
acid thing. Let's just burn you.
Wow, what a dark turn this podcast took at the end.
Oh, it's time to go to our group therapy session now and just shoot that over.
Okay, that's it. That is all of our facts. Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to get in contact with any of us about the things that we have said over the course of this podcast, we can be found on our various social media accounts. I'm on Instagram on @Schreiberland. James,
My Twitter is @JamesHarkin.
Andy,
Mine is @AndrewHunterM.
and Anna. Where can they get us as a group?
You can get us on Twitter on @NoSuchThing or on Instagram @NoSuchThingAsAFish, or you can email podcast@qi.com.
Yep. Or you can go to our website, nosuchthingasafish.com. All the previous episodes are up there, as well as a link into the portal that will get you to Club Fish, our private members club, where we post lots of bonus episodes and lots of fun things go up there. So do check that out. Otherwise, come back here next week. We have another episode coming up. We'll see you then. Goodbye.